All right, this is the personal statement. So remember that you need to create the annotated bibliography before you actually sit down to pen the personal statement. So these are perspectives and planning. Also, remember to use the Search and School Information tutorial, Bureau of Labor Statistics tutorial, and any tutorial that is connected to this particular topic. So, what is the personal statement? The personal statement is an opportunity for you to express. This is your opportunity to express your desire to enter the field, to choose a particular type of major. The major being, say, accounting or electrical engineering, or in my case, the English major. This is your opportunity to express. You cannot express interest in something that you don't know about. No one is saying that you need to know everything about the major right now, because you're going to be able to do that once you actually enter the major. But you should have done some kind of research about your intended major. Therefore, while you are expressing, keep in mind that you are making a persuasive argument, meaning that you are suggesting to the admissions committee, and the admissions committee is both the regular university admissions committee as well as the major admissions committee. You're trying to persuade them that you are a good fit for the major. So for instance, if you are a person who wants to become a creative writer, well, are you writing now? Have you developed any poems? Have you developed anything that is related to what it is that you want to do? And so it is considered a persuasive argument. Also, it's a sales presentation. You are selling yourself. For some majors, you are required to do an admissions interview. Well, if you're not required to do an admissions interview for your particular major, then you have to sell yourself within the actual personal statement. It is also a reflection of experiences, your life, educational work. So that means you have to have some kind of awareness of who you are as an individual in order to be able to express yourself and persuade and also sell the admissions committee, major admissions committee, on who you are as an individual. It's also a plan for achieving ambitions. That means that you have to be forward looking. You just can't say I'm going to live for the day without some kind of plan. And the personal statement gives you that opportunity to sort of outline some kind of vision for your life. And also remember that it is your first assignment. This is your first writing assignment. And so you're being judged on your ability to say create a thesis statement, basically suggesting that your thesis is, I'm choosing the English major, I'm choosing the electrical engineering major, etc. And then supporting that thesis with some kind of background information, what you have done to date. So this is the overview. So there are different types of prompts that you will normally see. You're going to see a diversity prompt. You're definitely going to see an autobiography prompt. For freshman applicants, those individuals who may be dual credit students, you're still considered freshmen in terms of status, unless you decide to graduate high school, take a year off, attend community college, and take courses. Once you do that, then you become a transfer student. Then you have an all applicants and a topic of your choice. So the diversity is something that you're going to see even on job applications today. What is your definition of diversity and the role it has played in your own learning and development? And diversity doesn't always have to refer to race, ethnicity, culture. It could also refer to cognitive diversity, how you learn within individually and within groups. So diversity is something that you want to research, because this particular question is on applications as well. The autobiographies tell us about yourself, where you have been, where you feel you are going, is a question that some of us have trouble really just being able to understand, because the span of our life could be up to 25 years and maybe we haven't been anywhere. But you still should have some awareness between 18 years old and 25 years old, and about who you are as an individual, where you're going, and what your plans are. Then of course the freshman applicant describe the world you come from. That could be family, community, or school. And how has that world shaped your dreams and aspirations? So it depends on what kind of world you come from. If you come from an economically depressed uh, background, maybe you grew up in poverty, or you grew up rich. It doesn't matter. Describe that world where you come from and how has it shaped your dreams and aspirations. Then all applicants usually have to tell about a personal quality, talent, accomplishment, contribution, experience that is important to them. And what about this quality accomplishment makes them proud? That means you need to know what your personal qualities are, what your talent is, what your accomplishments are, contribution, experience. And that's something to think about, because a lot of people don't know that the most important aspect of who you are going to be is falls under between talent and accomplishment. You using your talents to accomplish something, and you have to be in a sort of problem solution oriented mindset. You can't be the person. There's a difference between a person who solves a problem and then a person who is a problem solver. Sometimes a person who solves a problem is a person who will find an immediate, haphazard, hasty type of resource. But then there's a person who is a long-term thinking. That person is a problem solver. And then topic of your choice, no explicit content. You might see something like, you choose any content you want and tell us about whatever it is you want. They're still looking for a well-developed essay with a thesis supporting topics, sentences, and supporting evidence, and then closing it out with your future plans. So no matter what type of essay, what no matter what type of prompt they require of you, they still want a very cohesive argument. So there are other types of prompts that you might see. There are scholarship application prompts. So describe your participation in extracurricular activities. What have you learned from your experiences? Those experiences could come from community service, volunteer work, clubs, sports, family, church. Describe your academic career short-term and long-term goals. Who in your life has been your biggest influence and why? And describe how you have demonstrated leadership ability both in and out of school. So whenever you see a participation reference within a sentence, they're really talking about leadership. What has been your leadership? Is not you just being a member of a committee, but you taking on responsibility and owning something. It could be you being the person who's over the fundraiser. It could be you being the person who's the treasurer. Whatever it is, they're looking for leadership, your ability to take ownership of something, be responsible for it, set the goal, endure the goal, and complete the goal. When you're thinking about who has been your biggest influence and why, you're not talking about somebody who said, oh, my mother is great, she's wonderful, she's my biggest influence. That's not enough to tell the committee how that person has been a huge influence in your life and how it connects to why you are choosing the major, why you are choosing to go into a certain field. So if that person, if you want to be a nurse, and your mother before her was a nurse, then what was it about their role as nurses that sort of influenced you and made you think, okay, maybe I should become a nurse, and let me begin the process of becoming a nurse. So what are one, two, three things that they did that sort of helped you come to the conclusion of who you're going to become or what you want to become? So then there's also another type of problem that you'll see. That's your gaps and any sort of violation or disciplinary issues you might have had. So your educational gaps. If you graduate from high school and you decide to take a year off, depending upon the institution, and if they have a gap year policy, you don't necessarily need to create a statement for educational gaps. However, if you graduate from high school and you attend junior college fall semester, but you decide to skip spring semester, then you would definitely need to have a create a statement about educational gaps. It could be anything. It could be that you needed to go to work to save money. It doesn't matter. Just remember that the application cannot move forward if you do not create that statement. And if the admissions department is requiring you to create a statement. And transcript evaluators are the one who call attention to the gaps. Violations. So have you ever been found responsible for a disciplinary violation at an educational institution you have attended from ninth grade forward, whether related to academic misconduct or behavior misconduct that resulted in a disciplinary action that could be probation, suspension, removal, dismissal. And so what they're looking for is they're going all the way back to your ninth grade, your high school years. Now, all of us could have had some kind of issue. What they're looking for is a statement of growth, that you outline what went wrong. You also outline the steps you took to correct that issue and where you are today. Again, it can't move forward if there's any sort of statement that is required. So here's the prompt that you're going to write from. It is the transfer applicant prompt, and it is: what is your intended major? Discuss how your interest in the subject developed. Describe any experience you have had in the field, such as volunteer work, internships, employment, participation in student organizations, activities, and what you have gained from your involvement. Most important aspect of this prompt is you understanding that the first thing you want to do is look for coordinating conjunctions. Those are your fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And so in this, we see that we have an and in multiple places. We do not have an or. So that means if we have and, the coordinating conjunction and, that means you have to answer both parts of the question. You cannot just assume that you should only answer one. So what is your intended major is the anchor, is asking you what your major is, not your intended career field. So that means that everything that you write after that statement, after that response or answer to that question, should support that statement. It should not deviate from it. Discuss how your interest in the subject developed. Discuss is something that refers to conversation. So have you ever been in a situation where you had one friend, it was hard to get a conversation out of, no real discussion, and then you had another friend who sort of just took over the conversation. You both knew the material. You went back and forth, sometimes arguing, but it was a very engaging, productive discussion. Well, that's how discuss works when you are discussing your interest in the major. There's a discussion where you don't have enough knowledge or information about the major to actually express or create um a well-developed, defined discussion within your personal statement. And then there's the other side of the discuss that you've done your research and you're speaking to your ability to sort of tell the admissions committee that you are aware of what it takes to become this major or choose this major. Discuss how your interest in the subject developed speaks to timeline. So somewhere way back, you had this interest of becoming, say, a nurse. Maybe your mother or your grandmother got sick and you all had to go to the doctor, and you saw how the nurse was nice to your grandmother, and you said to yourself, maybe I should become that. She's really nice. So it started somewhere. And I'm not saying that you're going to become a nurse as a result of seeing a nurse be nice to your grandmother, but it does suggest to the admissions committee that that the idea of becoming a nurse started somewhere. Then describing the experience you have had in the field. Again, when we're talking about experience, we're talking about leadership participation. What did you do in terms of volunteer, internships, employment, etc.? And then again, what have you gained from your involvement? So that basically suggests, did you gain anything? Did you learn anything? Because you didn't have a knowledge of something prior to um, considering this major. So as a result of your research and working in the field and gaining experience, what did you gain from your involvement? And how, and implicit in that is the question, did you gain anything, and what are your plans? So this is the prompt that you're going to use to write the essay. You want to make sure that you read the English assignment sheet for the personal statement. So I want you to pause here and think about um, the personal statement prompt that I just gave you, and it's right off here to the right. Take some time to pen a preliminary response before moving forward in the lecture. And then the one thing that you want to ask yourself, can you respond to the prompt? uh, is there a gap in your knowledge base about the questions that are asked before you? Do you feel knowledgeable enough to respond to the prompt after conducting research with the annotated bibliography? And that should tell you that that if you that you should actually feel more knowledgeable after doing the annotated bibliography. But if you don't, that's also telling. So you want to think about this. Pause here. Think about this prompt. What is your intended major? Discuss how your interest in the subject developed. Describe any experience you have had in the field, and then what you have gained from your involvement. So pause here. So there are some questions to consider when you are planning to write what is special, unique, distinctive, impressive about you and your life story. What details of your life, personal or family problems, history, people, or events that have shaped you or influenced your goals might help the committee better understand you or help set you apart from other applicants. So any sort of personal issues or whatever, just keep in mind there are some status quo answers that many people use all the time, especially the one where I'm the first one to go to college in my family. That is still a very important statement to make. However, it's more status quo because you have many people who have that same statement. So then, what is unique about you? What what sets you apart from that status quo statement? And then, when did you become interested in this field? What have you learned about it that has further stimulated your interest and reinforced your conviction? So I always tell students that if something is your major, you should be pulling A's in your major. So that means when you take courses and you are getting A's in that major course, that should reinforce the conviction for you that this is the right thing that you should be going after. Do also keep in mind that you can be very skilled at something and get high grades in something and still not like it. You could be a great mathematician but hate don't want to be in the field. So that's something that you want to consider as well. So also questions to consider: how have you learned about this field? Through classes, reading, seminars, work, or other experiences. It's good to mention the fact that you have taken courses in a major and have gotten A's, have earned A's in those courses, because that reinforces also the admissions committee perspective of you that you are a good fit. If you have worked a lot during your college years, what have you learned? Any sort of leadership, managerial, and how has that work contributed to your growth? What are your career goals? And so sometimes you may not know what they are just yet, but you should have some kind of clue about what it is you want to do, whether or not you want to get into research, whether or not you want to work for a corporation. You have had exposure, more than enough exposure to different companies. Do you want to work for a company? So, or do you want to have your own business? And that's a career goal as well. So, one of the general advice from admissions committees is that answer the question that is asked. Don't use the same statement for all applications. That means what they're suggesting to you is that you need to tailor your application. Write a general personal statement, but to every school that you're interested in, make sure you tailor it to that institution and that program. So, for instance, if you want to get into computer science, well, we know that UTD has a very has a huge center for computer science, right? So you want to speak to that center. That means you are tailoring that personal statement to UTD, or you are tailoring that personal statement to SMU or UNT. Also, tell a story. Don't bore the admissions committee. Craft your statement so that it is fresh, lively, different. Try to distinguish yourself through your own story. People remember stories, and so if you can write from a narrative story standpoint, that would help the reader, help the admissions committee reader remember you and your personal statement. Be specific. Don't state that you would make an excellent doctor or lawyer. Back up your contentions with specific reasons. Your desire to become X should be logical. So that means, like I said, when I ask you about discuss how your interest in the subject develop, there should be a logical progression of ideas concerning that, beginning with the initial timeline, whatever that was. Maybe you were 10 years old, and like me, I used to line up all my dolls and bears, put pen and paper in front of them, and teach them something. I don't know what I was teaching them, but I was teaching them something. And then the progression of that was I lined up all of the neighborhood kids, sat them down, put pen and paper in front of them, and taught them something. Then I skipped all the way to when I was a tutor and served one professor. Then I was a drop-in writing tutor. Then I decided to go to graduate school, and I had to graduate teach. And so there are different ways that whatever you say should be a logical progression of ideas. You shouldn't just automatically say I would be a great doctor because I think I would be a great doctor. It should be a logical conclusion to your story. Also, concentrate on the opening paragraph, grab the reader's attention, set the framework very early. That's why you want to respond to the anchor. Figure out what the anchor is for any writing prompt that you have to write for, not just the personal statement. Tell what you know, detail your interest and experience in your particular field, as well as some knowledge of the field. Too many people graduate with no knowledge in the field they hope to enter. Refer to experiences, classes, conversations. So that's why I always bring in Bureau of Labor Statistics, because it gives you an opportunity to gain some understanding about what the field requires of you. Write well, do some research, be meticulous, proofread your essay, avoid cliches. And definitely avoid conversational language. This is still a formal writing assignment. It is your first. So one of the rules that you want to consider is strive for depth, not breadth, meaning that you want to take one to two or three experiences and expound upon them versus just listing them off. Narrow focus to key themes. Evaluate experiences rather than describing them, because remember, you're going to provide some sort of resume. So you don't necessarily need to list everything in your personal statement. You're taking one to two or three of those experiences on the resume and explaining them, evaluating them, and taking some time to analyze. And then address the school's unique features that interest you. So again, if you want to become an accountant and the school's program has an accounting lab and has an accounting, a well-renowned accounting person or something like that, that's what you want to address in your personal statement. So then some common pitfalls is trying to uh, submit a resume basically in place of a personal statement, or trying to use the personal statement to list off all of your resume elements, which is you repeating information. Let the resume be the resume, and let the personal statement be the personal statement. Also, be careful about getting on your soapbox. Don't try to preach to the reader. It's better to engage and create engaging language and make it about unity and we and us versus pointing the finger to the you. And then do not discuss money as a motivator within a um, personal statement. There may be exceptions to the rule. I mean, if you want to become a banker and you want to run a bank one day, of course you would have to think about money and money management. So here's some advice from admissions representatives. The mistake people make most often is not to look at what the questions are asking. Some people prepare generic statements because they are applying to more than one school, and it is a lot of work to do a personal essay for each school. On the other hand, generic statements detract from the applicant when we realize that we're one of six schools and the applicant is saying the same thing to each and every school, despite the fact that there are critical differences between the kinds of schools they may be applying to. They don't take the time. They underestimate the kind of attention that is paid to these essays. And remember, there's for the major admissions, you got an admissions committee for general admissions, transfer admissions, but you also have an admissions committee for the major admissions, and that could be a 5-person committee. It could be a 3-person committee. 2 people can sign off, and that would be fine. But one of the 2 could say, I'm not quite sure, and it goes to a 3rd person. And when it goes to a 3rd person, that person would be the one who determines if they sign off on your application. So again, take a look at what the essay asks and deal with those issues articulately and honestly. At least 2 and sometimes 3 people read each essay. I read them to make the final decision. And this is an example from an admissions representative. So what are your next steps? Review the English assignment sheet for the personal statement and then pen a response to the prompt. And so again, here is a recap of that prompt. What is the intended major? How did the writer's interest in the major develop? Describe the writer's experiences in the major field. And what has the writer gained as a result of his or her involvement in the major field? So do take some time to begin thinking about penning a response to the prompt.